Right, good morning everyone. Just on 10 o'clock, so we'll get on with our meeting today. Welcome to Cabinet on the Tuesday the 30th of January. Members, if you've got your mobile phones, can you put them on mute or silent, something or other so we don't get disturbed during the meeting. And when you get the chance to speak, can you speak directly into the microphone, particularly not so much for us in the chamber, and for those that are online, get a chance to hear what you've got to say. So apologies, Kate, I don't think we have any today. Minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of December. I am aware that there is an amendment to minutes 31. Kate, do you want to refer to that?
So yes, thank you. I'd like to draw attention to an error on my part in respect of minute 31. That's the housing strategy. In paragraph 3, it should read that the portfolio holder was content with recommendation B, or whether she proposed an alternative wording for recommendation A, not in addition. Therefore, recommendation A should read as follows: that the following be added to the end of paragraph 2.3 of the cover report. This is to maximise the delivery of new affordable housing and to make the best use of the development capacity, expertise and funding capacity within the registered provider.
Thank you very much, Kate, for clarifying that. With that amendment, colleagues, can we accept the minutes? I'll take silence. Good, fine, thank you very much. Declarations of interest? Not hearing any. Public participation, there isn't any today. Questions from members? We have one question today from Councillor Brian Heatley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brian Heatley from Roble and Wyke. Very short question. Will you be bringing forward before the 31st of March 2024 a proposal for the Council to charge double council tax on second homes from 2025-26 under the new Section 11C of the Local Government Finance Act 1992?
Brian, I'll ask Jill Haynes to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm Councillor Jill Haynes. I've got the portfolio for corporate development and transformation, and I'm actually dealing with this area at full council. So thank you, Councillor Heatley, for your question. I can confirm that, yes, a paper is being brought to full council on the 13th of February that will now progress Cabinet's recommendations. Following the enactment of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, we are now able to bring before full council the recommendation that a Dorset council sets the resolution to charge a 100% council cash premium on second homes from the 1st of April 2025. The paper will also provide awareness of expected exceptions. That's quite difficult to say, isn't it? Following the awaited changes in law, the paper will also bring forward Cabinet's recommendation that Dorset Council adopts the now permitted change to the commencement point when applying the 100% premium to long-term empty and unoccupied properties. Currently, this starts after 2 years, and the recommendation contained within the paper will be that this is changed to commence after 1 year of being long-term empty and unoccupied. So thank you. We'll be hearing more about that at full council.
Thank you, Jill. I think that in short, Brian, the answer is yes to your question. Right. I'm conscious of the fact that one colleague at the back was finding difficulty in hearing Jill. Can you just make sure you have got your microphones close enough just to make sure that we all hear each other? Right, move on to the forward plan. As usual, these things are always moving. I note that we've got a fairly busy March, but one item that was on the April Cabinet was the fourth quarter financial outturn. We're quite clearly expecting it to arrive for us to look at in April was a little unreasonable. We need to give finance a chance to look at the numbers. So that will be moved to June. Other than that, can we accept the forward plan as drafted? Agreed? Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 7 now, quarter 3 financial monitoring report. Gary Suttle.
Thank you, Chair. Gary Suttle, portfolio holder for finance, representing Swanage. Quarter 3. present the outcome for Q3, which sees a significant recovery from a half-year position. You will recall that we faced a forecast of a net shortfall of 11.985 million, and I can now report that this has been lowered to just 3.5 million, equating to 1.01% of this year's annual budget. It is by no means the end, and with one more quarter to go, I hope that we can get as close as possible to the actual budget for 23-24. Although this is good news, we remain under financial pressure. Much of the improvement is attributed to movements in business rates and collection. It does not mean our work stops here, as these are likely to be one-off items and the underlying issue of an underfunded council remains. The work of our future council will identify significant savings in the coming months, savings that will give underlying long-term benefits, enabling us to stabilise the financial position. The report is detailed and covers each directorate. I again thank the finance team for the significant work done and to those who contributed to it. We ensure that it contains all of the information that has been asked for over the meetings in an effort to bring more information and content to the quarterly finance reports. The recommendations are set out on the first page, numbers 1 to 4, which I propose acceptance of. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconder, please.
Gone off again, has it? That's not working now. Thank you.
Got a yes from the back, so yes? Yes, good. Right, before I open this up to Cabinet, any comments in the chamber? Other colleagues? Brian?
Thank you. I can't resist reminding Councillor Suttle what he said when he introduced the Q1 report. He told us that we weren't to look upon these reports as a kind of B-movie where we would have a big overspend in the first quarter and then it would recover during the year. It wasn't going to be like that. Well, what have we got? We've got a recovery later on. However, it made me look back and compare our Q1 reports with the Q3 reports over the 5 years. And actually, Councillor Suttle was right overall. In 3 of those years, the situation got worse. Now we have 2 of them when it got better. My favourite B-movie was my childhood watching of The Lone Ranger. What is noticeable about this is that every year something does come to the rescue. And what I've learnt from this is that the Lone Ranger obviously lives in central finance, because every year we have substantial amounts of money that we find between Q1 and Q3 in central finance. The average is about 6 million a year. I just raised this because it seems to me that this might be pertinent to some of our budget setting. Something's going on here which I don't quite understand, but it does seem that nearly every year, the exception was last year, we had quite large sums coming in central finance that were making the situation better. Thanks.
Little to say to that, really, other than the Lone Ranger lives in Swanage.
David Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. My question is basically a curiosity one regarding business rates and collection. I've noticed that we have a deficit with it, of course, and we have to pay a fee with our staff to go and collect the rates. As we collect most of this for the government central, do we actually bill the government for our collection fees?
I think I'm going to have to email you an answer because unfortunately and unbelievably, I don't know the answer off the top of my head, unless I can be supported by my colleagues who also probably look to me as if they want to send you an email.
Thank you. Good morning, Aidan Dunn, Chief Finance Officer. I think that is something that we'll have to research. Could I just clarify the question? Do we charge government for working as their collection agents? Is that essentially the question? Okay, we can. I don't think we do, and I don't think we can. But let me confirm that outside the meeting. Thank you.
Right. Anybody else? I'm going to come back with a second one. Anybody else? No? I'll come back to the Cabinet then. Colleagues, you've heard what Gary's had to say. It's a good news story, actually, despite Brian's concerns about the Lone Ranger. I think it is a good news story. I wouldn't want to be... I was once told as a young manager that you can spend 10 minutes talking about success and 2 hours talking about failure. And we're not going to take very long on this, because I think this has been pretty successful in the way we've gone about the management of our finances in this council. Another good example of it. Any comments, or can we agree? Anybody disagree? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Move on to agenda item 8, and it's Gary again.
Right, so we now move to the budget paper. So I present the Budget and Medium-Term Financial Plan Strategy report for your attention. The budget proposals follow significant consultation with all councillors across all parties. Indeed, we've seen the most extensive level of meetings, discussions, task and finish groups, and of course both scrutiny committees. And I thank all those involved and Councillors Taylor and Bartlett for the scrutiny process. I present to you proposals for a balanced budget with substantial increases in funding for all aspects of service delivery as set out in 18.2, and in particular for Police Directorate, where we have seen the most budget pressure over the last year. Police services are very exposed to inflation, and it's important they're funded adequately. This budget maintains and protects essential frontline council services on which local residents and businesses rely. We propose an increase in annual council tax, which will be just under 3%. In addition, this council will take the social care precept of just under 2% to ensure the funding of social care. The actual figure of uplift is 4.996%. In financial terms, it is £1.82 per week on a Band D property. Set out in 11.4, you will see that we are anticipating significant growth in business rates and 5% increase in fees and charges, with 3.2% for inflation, and recent figures support that assumption as inflation comes under control and falls from heights of 10+% to the most recent 4% for 12 months to December 2023. There's been much made of government announcements which appear to indicate significant additional funding, giving our core spending power an uplift of 6.5%. However, despite the press, in fact, to achieve this, we have to take the maximum in council tax increases, which equate to 66% of the uplift. So perhaps not quite the saviour of local government, more of save yourself. Many councils are funded via revenue support grant from local government, many councils receiving millions of pounds. It is not the case for Dorset. We are to receive the grand sum of £698,000 this year, an enormous uplift of £43,000. For the benefit of members, we've produced a graph at 13.14. You'll see Leicester receiving 35.6 million, and you'll probably just see us as a tiny red bar, hence the arrow, almost at the bottom. This is why the leader spends so much time lobbying for fairer funding. It's not a myth, as you can see. It's a fact. Speaking of lobbying, we welcome the government's announcement last week of additional funding for local government. Dorset Council's allocation of its funding is estimated at £4 million, which goes some way to easing the pressure we face, though our underlying financial challenges remain. This extra money has been secured through effective lobbying of government by organisations like the County Council's network and by our leader, Councillor Spencer Flower, lobbying our MPs. Simon Hoare, Minister for Local Government, played a key role in negotiations. And it shows some recognition by government of the need for additional funding for social care as well as help for rural authorities to deliver essential services. And this brings us to our Future Council programme. In November, Cabinet set out a challenge to officers to reimagine the Council. We wanted a future vision for the Council to take us beyond local government reorganisation, whilst finding a new way for the Council to operate, which would maximise value for money and efficiency, whilst becoming more responsive and customer-focused. This is work that would have been a natural progression for this Council. I would like to start this work at least a year earlier, maybe even 2. There was something called COVID that delayed much of what would have been a normal work stream in this last 5 years. The point of LGR was to protect the services provided by Dorset Council to the community. It was not an option to continue in the format pre-LGR. There was too much financial pressure, particularly on the old county structure, to allow it to continue. The business plan for LGR was to enable a stable structure of local government moving forward, but with the understanding that this had to be underpinned by substantial savings. Our Future Council is an extension of that work. I know that the level of savings associated with our Future Council has been of concern to members. So with the additional funding from government announced last week, I propose to amend the budget proposals so that our Future Council savings target for next financial year is reprofiled from 12 million to 8 million. To those of you who may feel that this remains an ambitious target, I refer you to this administration's track record. Savings of over 96 million since 2019. This has allowed us to ensure that the principle of local government reorganisation is protected, enabling support and continuation of all services within year budgets, closely adhering to the projected outcomes. Work on our Future Council is part of a Council Invest to Save policy. We included the figure as a prudent assessment of what we would hope to save. My long-term target over coming years is £20 million plus, because our aim with this work is to address the longer-term requirements of this Council's medium-term financial plan. I've stressed throughout the time that I've been in this position, but we are dealing with the long-term financial security of Dorset, not in-year shortages, and this work is part of our aim. At the half-year stage in 2024, the Section 151 officer will review the work and assess at that time if it is on target. If not, I give an assurance that we would restructure the budget. However, I don't believe that this will be necessary, and this work would not be in the budget if any doubt existed. And finally, to those of you who are concerned about reserves, the paper is very clear. We have not seen a reduction in the general fund reserves, but have overseen a solid increase in the general fund throughout the period to maintain this Council's 10% reserve of the Council's budget. I propose the budget papers to this meeting. Thank you.
I'll second the recommendation, but I'll have a lot more to say at full council rather than this morning. So before I open it up to Cabinet, colleagues in the Chamber wish to comment? Paul Kimber from Portland.
Thank you very much, Chair, and if I dare say, Gary, I'm not going to talk about the Lone Ranger, but what my concern is that we're putting up our council tax by 4.99, and given the difficulties that many local authorities are going through, I mean, it's probably, I have to say, that this is seems that near enough acceptable. However, my biggest concern is, and I can't go through a meeting without mentioning Portland, as you know, is my concern for the very poorest in our community. My request is that we make sure that benefits and those in our community that require benefits are given the fullest information that we can give as a local authority. I can't reiterate this more and more. And that is, I would ask you to take that away and give us your thoughts on that. One area I always pick on each year is the RSG, and I've noticed we're not bottom of the league anymore. We seem to have moved up a few places, but I was listening to today on the way here today, and I was listening to Derbyshire Council and telling us how many council houses they had built, and I was really, really envious and jealous. So I ask once again, and I possibly ask this question again year in, year out, the RSG. We pride ourselves on, well, particularly the Conservative group prides itself on meeting ministers. I really want answers as to why we're so low when we have so many problems and issues in certain areas of Dorset. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul, and I always appreciate the need for lower paid people on benefits. And as you know, in the previous meeting, we put forward a new scheme to help those in most need with the introduction of 100% council tax relief for those in that bracket, which I believe will go a long way to help. I think the housing issue I would ask others to answer because it's not really my remit, but I think we have to look around us at our neighbours, and we are perhaps one of the most solid financial councils in the south at the moment. On my way in, like you, listening to the radio, I was listening to the trials and tribulations of Hampshire, £132 million budget deficit, proposal to shut 13 recycling facilities. You know, that's the sort of thing that facing. And when we have taken these last 5 budgets, every one has been designed to protect Dorset residents from having to face service reductions. And I believe it's gone a long way to doing that, and it has done. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Just a couple of other points that Paul's touched on. The council tax support, Paul, the CAB are used a lot. We encourage people to go to the CAB, who will direct people to the right places. We've done a huge amount of work, as you'll appreciate, to ensure that, I think it's 100% now, rather than 90% discount for those on low income. It's now 100%. That's a change of policy here. So that makes a huge difference. It protects those that are at the bottom end of the pay scale. You mentioned revenue support grant, for the benefit of those that listen. RSG is revenue support grant. It will be part of a comprehensive review of the formula beyond the general election. I'm aware of that. I've had conversations with ministers around this. It's long overdue. You're absolutely right. It should have been looked at some while ago. I mean, the two things that would benefit Dorset is rurality. The cost of providing services in rural areas is considerably greater than it is in urban, and the demographic of Dorset. You know, when we've got, and nobody concerns themselves with somebody getting to an age where they're enjoying life and so on, but our demographics now, around 30% of our population are over 65. That puts a strain on our services in one form or another. And I've had conversations, and it's quite clear there's an understanding of that. So there will be a complete review, and one would hope you'll get multi-year settlements. It's another factor which all of us grumble about. Getting a settlement every year has its benefits, has its disbenefits as well. And I think all of us in the sector would prefer to have a 3-year settlement on a revised formula so that we get a fair deal for Dorset. The shires, not just Dorset, but the other shire counties across the country, are also out of kilter in terms of revenue support grant around the reasons that I've expressed. So I hope that's answered your point. Anybody else? I got Shane Bartlett, I think, and then John. Shane, was it you?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Shane Bartlett, Ward Member of Wimble Minster, and the Chairman of the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee. I thought it'd be remiss of me not to make a few comments concerning the Scrutiny Committee and the scrutiny of the budget. Can I just take this time also to thank Aidan Dunn and his finance team and all the officers and presenters of the meeting and the portfolio holders who made themselves available on the day. It was quite an exhaustive meeting. It was over 5 hours long again. Aidan's still smiling, which is a good sign. And as I say, it was quite an exhaustive meeting, and I thank my committee as well for their endurance as well. The budget obviously was a critical one. I did say last year that this would be the budget that would be the critical one concerning local government finance and the way it was heading. You'll appreciate there was 18 comments and notes that come from the Scrutiny Committee to this Cabinet concerning various aspects of the budget. Scrutiny acknowledged that the usual risks associated were there again with the lack of funding from central government, which is faced by all council authorities up and down the breadth of the country. And there was a slide that did show both the national situation and the local situation around that. There was no absolute red flags were flagged up during the scrutiny meeting that would warrant a rejection of the budget outright, but there are obvious concerns due to the state of local government funding, as I've already said. And the one thing that really is, I think, of a concern to all would be the inflation and interest rates will be subject to global circumstances which are growing in concern and out of the control of the Dorset Council. And that's something that we'll have to bear in mind. The one thing I would say is that there is a bit of a concern around the business rates retention and how optimistic the government might be around that and the retention rates that we do get. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Shane. John.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. John Andrews, Councillor for Sherborne East. I'd just like to confirm what Gary had said, that instead of the 12 million future council or transition savings that we were supposed to be going to make, because that's what we've been talking about all through the budget cafe process, which I have to say has been very good, that we're still going to strive for them rather than just settle now that we've got £4 million from central government, that we're not going to go away from that target of 12 million. And how are we going to measure that if we are? Thanks.
So how does it describe it really? Basically, we're, as you know, we're sort of we're minus 12, and we've had a windfall, if you like, of 4. So I propose to reduce it to 8. But as I said in the budget speech, the target remains significantly more than 12. The target remains 20 plus throughout, because what we're trying to do is address the long-term financial stability, as opposed to just this in-year deficit, which we fight and argue about every year. The longer-term medium-term financial plan is the only real document that I've ever I spend a lot of time looking at, because it knows where the trajectory of this council is going. And it tells you that in the future, we will have more pressure, more difficulties. So we need to try and address that now, and that's what I've been trying to do over these 3 years that I've been doing budget, to try and address the longer term for future and stability. And the finance team here have worked solidly on that, and I think we're really winning, because we've pushed that along and we've reduced it, and with other windfalls, if you like, from second homes, etc. in the future, there will be less pressure, and that's what we've tried to achieve. And as I've said, all around us are not achieving that, so we're doing something right, and I think that shows in the papers we brought today.
Thanks, Gary. Right. Cabinet colleagues, Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. I'm reminded after our Councillor Kimber's comments regarding RSG that not that many years ago in this chamber, all the talk was the risk of the council having to be involved in negative RSG, literally a multi-million pound problem that we have managed to see off as a council. So when we talk about what effect has our lobbying of ministers done, I think one of the very clearest examples in
the stability of financial arrangements for Dorset Council has been, of course, that we have managed to see off to date any talk of RSG. Could the finance portfolio holder give us an indication what that figure might have looked like, either on an annual basis or collectively, had that actually happened?
I'd like to thank the honourable member for the question, and can assure him that an email response will be forthcoming.
Okay, it's a good point. You were quite right. Andrew was right to identify the fact there was a huge risk at one point of negative RSG. We've managed to fight that off, and we are. I don't believe we're in that danger that we were in the past. And we're not the only ones that were in that position either. Anybody else want to comment in the cabinet? Otherwise, I'm going. Ray was screwing his ear then. I thought perhaps he wanted to speak. Right. You've heard the recommendations. Any cabinet disagree with what's said in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved, and we'll now go to full council. Move on to agenda item 9, and I'm going to ask Laura Beddoe.
Thank you, Leader. So this paper outlines some principles for working together between Dorset Council and the voluntary community sector. I'll call it the VCS from now on. Apologies. So this is a really interesting paper. I would say that, and thanks to Laura Cornett for putting it together. The voluntary community sector, the VCS and Dorset Council, I'm really proud of the way that we've worked together, especially since the pandemic, which saw the formation of Dorset Together, made up of Dorset Council and various agencies, charities, and it was a really successful way of working together. I've included a link at 1.3 in the background about our financial support for the VCS and our commitment to that. And there's a link in the background papers there if you're interested. We've looked at various things along the way, community-based solutions. So Dorset Together has looked at as I said, the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, the Ukrainian refugee support, which is still ongoing. Again, all coming together to deliver something that's actually meaningful, it works, and I'm really proud of it. Now, this is a really rapidly changing sector, and we've got various competing priorities, but also a lot of opportunities. And I think the reason that Laura Cornett and I are bringing this paper forward as a principles rather than as a complete strategy is because right from the start, our commitment to the voluntary and community sector and to our partners is that we wouldn't simply produce a strategy from Dorset Council, this is how we're going to work with you, because that doesn't feel right. It's not in the spirit of what we've been doing. The integrated care system in Dorset, so all the providers, commissioners in the NHS, and us and other partners, is really kind of coming together and moving forward. And it feels right that we would outline how we want to contribute to that, but that our strategy would be co-created alongside our partners. We don't want to do two. That's never been the mantra, I don't think, of this council. So there's something about timing, there's something about alongside our health colleagues, how we want to work with the VCS, how they want to work with us. So what I'm bringing you today, and I hope you found it an interesting read, because there's some interesting stuff in there. There's some, I'm just going to draw out a couple of things. So, we're at a point where we're doing our future council. So how do we best meet our customer needs? We've got the public health doing thriving communities, all around place-based stuff. We've got the Families First for Children Pathfinder. We've got so much going on, and so have our voluntary sector and our health partners, that this is a moment in time where it feels right to say, this is our principle. These are the principles of how Dorset Council will work with and within this sector, and we'll develop the strategy together. So I hope you found it interesting. Happy to take any questions, and if they're hard, Laura's here to answer them. Thank you.
Can I seek a seconder? Simon Gibson? In the absence of microphone, I've got a thumbs up, which is a good indication. Thank you very much, Simon. Before I open it up to the Cabinet, I've got Derek Beer. Derek.
Thank you, Chairman. I asked the portfolio holders permission to bring this today. I spend a lot of time, as many of you might be aware, working with people who are in crisis, and I also work with transport operators and so on. And I wanted to bring this to Shaftesbury and deal with it, but I thought it would have more of an impact if I brought it to Dorset Council. So many people trying to access hospital care, health care, ongoing treatment for what they have, who might be in all sorts of different conditions, have misunderstandings about how they get to appointments, who should they see, why should they do it, and so on. And a lot of the advice is given to people you have who have a 100-mile round trip to have cancer treatment, ask a friend or whatever, and it can be a bit gutty. And what I'm asking is that could we have a summit between providers, transport providers, NHS people, doctors, surgeries, representatives and such like, not a negative, oh, this is all bad thing, but getting the misunderstandings together so that people can really understand what is there, what is on offer. There are people who really take the mickey out of community car schemes, but there are others who really, really need it. And people really don't understand when they go for an appointment what is on offer and how they can change things to make it work. And so my request is that perhaps this authority, perhaps at the Dorford Centre, whatever, could hold a bit of a summit like happened a few years ago at Upton House to clear the misunderstandings and take away a lot of the threats and worries that go with it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Derek. Laura.
Am I still on? Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually, that you didn't need to ask my permission to come, but I'm grateful that you gave me a heads up, because what you've just said exactly nails what I've just said in my introduction. It's got to be done together, and we don't want to, it would be wrong of us to set out a strategy that basically says, well, this is how we're going to do it. And then people come along and say, well, actually, have you thought about this? And this is a concern. It's not in my gift to promise that all our partners would attend or hold that. I think they would, and I think it's a great idea. I've got personal experience of travelling to Bristol, to Southampton, sometimes daily for treatment, and actually there is confusion out there. I think it's a great idea, and I'm very happy to commit to working that up as part of the work that we're doing with all our partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. I've quickly read through the report, and yes, impressive, and it's the right way to go for local government. I just want an assurance that part of this journey would involve the town and parish councils. We've had this discussion before, Councillor Beddoe, and I'd just like an assurance around that, please. Thank you. Basically, their voluntary community groups are much closer to town and parish councils probably than Dorset Council in some instances. Thank you.
Laura?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the short answer is yes. And the long answer is that a lot of the parish councillors are themselves volunteers. And you've only got to look around, in your own ward. Quite often it's the town and parish councils that also run the meals and that also run the community events. And so yeah, absolutely.
Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. If ever I was asked if I wanted a statue put up, I'm getting back to the Lone Ranger bit now.
Safeguarding of children across all partners, across all panels and partnerships. So happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Colleagues in the chamber, anybody wish to comment? Otherwise, I'll refer back to Cabinet. Cabinet colleagues, it's been proposed and seconded. Anybody come? Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sure members would expect me to speak on a matter that has always been of great concern to me. I know we can never be complacent about the safety of our children and young people, and we've always adopted a one council approach. It's everybody's business to care for our children and young people. So I'm not concerned about something I'm aware of in Dorset, but I am concerned about what has been reported quite widely nationally, which is a couple of instances of newborn or relatively young babies being found abandoned in carrier bags in public places. And what I want to understand is what scenario allows that to happen, and is that a risk that we do face in Dorset, and should we be looking to ways of mitigating it, or do we have effective systems in place to deal with it?
Teresa, wish to comment?
I won't reply by email, Councillor Parry, because I'm not sure I've quite got the answer. I think what I would say is that we continue to know that it takes a village, a town, a county to raise a child. And we need that community strength that Councillor Beddoe was just talking about in terms of really working closely with our communities. In addition to those tiny babies, we know nationally there's been a number of terribly sad outcomes for children in the last few weeks and months, and so much of that about being communities being supportive and watchful for families where there are troubles. We wouldn't expect to see concealed pregnancies where we've got that really helpful health visiting and community midwifery arrangement in place. But of course, people can hide anywhere. And it's the same issue around trafficking, and it's the same issue around child exploitation. We need the village's eyes, town's eyes, the county's eyes and support to all of our communities. And therefore, I think that's why we do presently avoid such matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Byron, do you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Leader. And I take Councillor Perry's point quite personally, actually, because he's absolutely right, and noting some of the instances that have happened very recently, I think the first thing I do when I turn on the telly and see some of those distressing situations is go back to Teresa and the team and ask those questions. Have we asked every question at every meeting? Are we working with our partners, health, police, across the board? Are we turning over every stone at every angle? Unfortunately, there are those instances in those unknowns, if you will, which we would absolutely not want to have here anywhere, let alone Dorset, but anywhere. But it is that partnership, and although this report talks about all the parts that Teresa has mentioned, every aspect within children's services and the One Council approach, and in fact across Dorset, is geared up or should be geared up in thinking about that, how we look after our young people, our vulnerable people, etc. And that's certainly at the top of my mind. And when things like this reports come through, challenging our officers, challenging our partners to ensure that we are doing everything we can. And something that I take great comfort in when I speak to Teresa and her team is that one thing Dorset does very well is we know our people. We know where the issues are. We work very hard to know where the issues are. I think that's probably the better way to put it. And that's at the forefront of all the work they do in children's services. As we know, it's quite a lot of work, and our partners, to mitigate against some of those horrendous things we have seen elsewhere, and certainly would not want to see here. So the point is well taken, Councillor Perry, and it's certainly at the forefront of my mind in challenging partners and officers going forward.
Thank you very much, Byron. Anybody else in the Cabinet? Any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 12, Dorset Centre of Excellence, Byron Quayle.
Thank you, Leader. I won't go over my name again, but with regards to this report has already come to the committee that oversees this. I take it the report is read, so I won't be going into any more information on the report, and I would like to just move to the recommendations, and of course we'll take up any questions if they come up.
Seconder, please. Laura? Yes, Laura seconds. Before I open up the Cabinet, anybody wish to speak? Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've read the report, it's really good, and it's pleasing to see that Coombe House it seems to be going in the right direction. We bought this during the COVID period, Chairman, and I had the opportunity to visit the site with yourself, with Councillor Parry, and with my colleague, Councillor Taylor, who's the chairman of the People and Health Scrutiny Committee. On the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee, we have been asking to see the business plan around this. And I note that in the report, page 445, the business plan, it says that it is, it says that the business plan is ahead of target in terms of its financial position and the school role in additional commercial and community activities that have been detailed. I'm just wondering, when will this be coming to scrutiny? We have repeatedly asked if we could see the business plan on this, and the life of this council is rapidly coming to an end, and the Scrutiny Committee would really appreciate to have a look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Teresa or Byron, one of you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Bartlett. This will be coming to scrutiny after the shareholder meeting. So I can assure you that it will be coming to your committee.
Point of clarity.
Thank you for that. It's just not, it's not in the work programme at the moment. That was also as well as asking the question. But thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think your point's made, well made, and we've taken account of it, so we'll cover that. Anybody else? If not, I'll come back to the Cabinet. Have I got a seconder? I have, haven't I? Got Laura. Right. Anybody else? No? Right. Does any member disagree with the recommendations? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Move on to agenda item 13. Jane Somper.
Thank you, Chairman. Always seem to be agenda item 13. Lucky I'm not superstitious. Thank you. In the same way that Coombe House has reported, Care Dorset has reported there to the shareholder committee. So I would like to present this paper as read. If there are any questions, Chris Best, who's the Managing Director of Care Dorset, is online. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Can I seek a seconder, please? David Walsh. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? If not, I'll come back to Cabinet. David.
Thank you, Chairman. I am pleased to see this report because when we had the old county council, I was on the original board of Tricuro. And I'd like to say that there is still much to do with Care Dorset, but it has made some positive accomplishments which must be recognised. So I'm very pleased to second this. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And I sit on the shareholders committee, and it comes across really well that huge progress has been made in the early days of this new organisation, and all credit to everybody involved in it. Right. So I don't. Any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Agenda item 14 is the Dorset Harbour 5-year business plan. Ray Bryan.
Thank you, Leader. We've got a bit of an issue with one of the items, so apologies to members of the public who won't have had the pleasure of seeing me during that short break. I'm Councillor Ray Bryan, portfolio holder for Highways, Travel, Environment and Harbours, and ward member of Two Saints. Oh, sorry, that's not Councillor Gorringe and myself, that's St Leonard's and St Ives. So I thought I'd just point that out. The Dorset Council Harbour strategy sets out the future direction of management for Weymouth, Lyme Regis and Bridport, which is also known as West Bay harbours. and how each of these unique and valued harbours will develop over 10 years from 2022 to 2032. It represents a set of strategic goals which will help achieve our vision to have thriving Dorset harbours at the heart of our communities. While the harbour strategy forms the backbone and a clear direction for all harbour operations and decisions, the business plan details how the management of capital reserves and the implementation of an asset management plan and development and project plan directly fulfil the aims of operationally and financially self-sufficient harbours. The business plan details the economic background, financial setting, the challenges faced and proposed developments for all three harbours, clearly demonstrating that significant levels of maintenance and improvements can be achieved whilst developing and maintaining healthy reserves and placing the harbours in a prime position to make full use of all future opportunities. The business plan works toward the wider delivery of and is intended to operate alongside and intrinsically with the strategy's goals. Realisation of the business plan will provide a firm financial basis to deliver the actions of Dorset Council's harbour strategy. The plan works strongly towards securing the harbour's position of being premium destinations on the south coast by supporting existing and developing leisure, tourism and commercial sectors and making a significant contribution to the local and blue economy. Following the unanimous endorsement for the adoption of the business plan at last November's meeting of the Harbours Advisory Committee, the same recommendation is brought before Cabinet today. I'd like to give my congratulations to Ed Carter, who is actually present in the chamber today, who has recently been appointed with responsibility for Dorset Harbours in total. He's working very closely with James Radcliffe, who is the Harbour Master for West Bay and for Lyme, and they're a great team to work with. They know what we want to deliver. We want to make the harbours as self-sufficient as we possibly can. We're going through a period of change at the moment, but I have every confidence that with their management, we will achieve the changes needed. So the recommendation that's in front of us, Leader, is that the Dorset Harbours 5-year business plan be approved and adopted. And if anybody wants to see the 5-year plan, it's there, and I'm sure it can be made available to whoever would like to sort of read it in detail. Makes good reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. Can I have a seconder, please? Jane Somber, do you wish to speak? No, she doesn't wish to speak, but she's seconding it. Thank you very much, Jane. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? Before I bring it back to Cabinet? No. Any member of the Cabinet wish to comment beyond what's already been said? No. So there's obviously no disagreement to this report. So in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Well done to everybody involved in this. Good piece of work. Really good. Right, agenda item 15, assets, community assets transfer policy. Andrew Parry.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Andrew Parry, Cabinet Member for Assets and Property and Ward Member for West Parley. Before us today is largely a refresh of a policy last seen in 2021, so 3 years would be the appropriate time for its return to Cabinet. It does come to Cabinet via the Overview Committee, which did give this a very thorough review recently, and I don't know if there are any representatives of that particular committee present with us today. They may choose to comment. But of particular in the recommendations was that we should develop a mechanism for the notification of ward members should there be a request that has met with approval in its initial phases for an assets transfer. And we need to understand at what level of influence that would be in terms of mechanism for the decision-making process. But I understand that is the amendment that was put forward from Overview, which has been included in the paper for Cabinet today.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Do I have a seconder for that? Ray? You wish to comment?
Yes, Chairman, very happy to second this. Some good work.
Thank you, Ray. I would obviously compliment the Overview Committee for the work they've done on this, because it does enable us to have a much more rounded view about some stuff on occasions, and I think this is one of them. Anybody in the chamber wish to comment? Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Just one. Can we make sure that the town councils are fully aware of this report? Just a question, and I know from my own council we are looking at some of these items with bated breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I believe the town and parish councils have been briefed on this topic through the DAPTC quite recently. So you're absolutely right. It's a really good point you've made. We are really on that and making sure we keep that strong dialogue between town and parishes, and I'll let Andrew come back.
Thank you. And as I would say to Councillor Kimber, as I say to all councillors, do please remember to include this in your monthly report to your town and parish councils so that they are aware of it. I think that's a sensible responsibility for us as Dorset councillors to ensure what happens.
Shane.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, another good report, and it probably made sense to actually revisit this and this policy. But I note on page 535, the policy is reviewed every 2 years. There is no mention that I could see in there about a scrutiny review of it. It should be the scrutiny committee that's doing the review of it, in my personal opinion. And whether that should be after 6 months or a year is up for debate. If it's 6 months, could a chairman's briefing be brought to the scrutiny committee to see how the policy is going? If the view is that 6 months would be too quick a time frame to do it in, but certainly I think after the first year there should be a report coming to scrutiny as to how the policy is performing. And also, I was pleased to see on page 540 that the ongoing reviews gives the ability for the council to take the asset back if it's not performing. If I understood that correctly when I read it, thank you.
And I've taken it as a given, really, that scrutiny would be involved, as would you normally do anyway. But Andrew, you'd like to comment?
Certainly, and I'm very happy for that periodically and a timescale to be agreed with the chair of scrutiny, that they can review this as part of their work. I know you are eager to populate your work programme. I'm sure we can have that conversation. Do just let us know what information you'll require, and I'm sure officers will make it available to you.
We get that point, that recognition noted in the minutes, then we've got that hook there to ensure we don't miss it. Beryl.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I welcome this. It's a really good thing for the town and parish councils. And knowing that Dorset Council has a lot of assets that, are in localities that the town and parish councils sometimes not aware of, and I would ask that the asset register is actually known to them for their own areas, because lots of the town and parish councils that I've talked to, not only in my own patch, they're not aware of any or all of the Dorset-owned things that maybe that they could access or have transferred to their local communities. So I think it's important that we follow this up with something like that, if it's possible. Is that possible, please?
Thank you, Beryl. Andrew?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very strong view that all Dorset councillors should, of course, familiarise themselves with the Dorset Explorer system that we have that does, of course, list councils' assets county-wide. But if there are anomalies, then do please raise them with the Property and Assets team, and we will endeavour to offer clarification whether they are Dorset Council-owned, or in many cases, they are still owned by private estates or, of course, town and parish authorities.
Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else? Back to the Cabinet. Any comments? No? Right. It's been moved and seconded, so I feel there's no disagreement on this. So in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Move on to agenda item 16 now, Weymouth Regeneration Levelling Up Fund Progress and Next Steps. Simon Gibson.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Councillor Simon Gibson, the portfolio holder for Levelling Up and Economic Development. Bringing forward a paper today. It's the next steps in the levelling up of Weymouth. This is the third report in the last 4 cabinet meetings from the Levelling Up team. but this is a big long-term project and is absolutely right to deliver the Levelling Up Fund schemes in a manageable way. The recommendations that I'm bringing forward today, of which there are 6, do seek to move the project forward in a number of ways. Number 1, the recommendation number 1, is to confirm that we will deliver what we bid for and what we said we would deliver when securing the Levelling Up funding from government. Recommendation 2 is to support the excellent report from Professor Tony Bavard that seeks to bring together the views of the local members, the Town Council, the local Member of Parliament, as well as key stakeholders. The report provides a short-term, medium-term and long-term perspective in how we could deliver Levelling Up, and I'd like to place on record my thanks to Professor Bavard. Recommendation 3 is asking for approval to start the public procurement process for North Quay. We want to do that in a way that works with the market, but gives Dorset Council enough control over what's developed. Recommendation 4 is to work with the Harbour colleagues to deliver Levelling Up commitments as well as the Harbour commitments in a harmonious way. The Harbours team do a terrific job, and delivering Levelling Up is good for the Harbour and vice versa. This recommendation will start considerations over a new harbour revision order in an appropriate manner. Recommendation 5 seeks authority to find a development partner for the Weymouth Bowl site. And finally, recommendation 6, authorising the procurement of the required services for the work to begin on walls F and G on the peninsula. Harbour colleagues have asked for a very small addition to recommendation 6, which I've agreed to, and therefore I'll read the recommendation out in full for clarity. So recommendation 6 will now read that authorise the procurement of the necessary engineering and consultancy services, inserting the word materials, and a construction contractor for walls F and G on the peninsula, and delegate to the executive lead for place, in consultation with the Executive Director Corporate Development and the portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment to award, inserting the words necessary contracts, subject to the appropriate budget being identified and allocated. I hope this demonstrates, Chairman, that there's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone on even since we last came to Cabinet pre-Christmas. And before we head into the debate and before we answer any questions, I would just like to place on my thanks to Julian and the team for all the work that they've done to get us to this place.
Thank you very much, Simon. Seconder, please. Councillor Ray Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Obviously, several sections of this affect my work on harbours, and I've got to say I'm so pleased that the teams are now working so closely together to make sure we achieve our aims, which is to get the best possible outcome for the residents of Dorset. And we often think that it's just a Weymouth issue. It isn't. It is the whole of Dorset that gets affected by the work we do here. So it's great to see the officers and obviously the 2 portfolio holders, which is Councillor Gibson and myself, working closely together. And I think the report is essential that we recommend, so I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much, Ray. Comments from anyone in the chamber? Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. I particularly welcome this report, although I'm a Portland councillor. This is our near neighbour that we've had I think, 1,000-year battle with. But anyway, but I thank you for this because the number of jobs this will generate will be so important to our local economy. As you know, there was a report said about, if you like, we've never got over the closure of the naval base and the many jobs we lost there. And so this quite naturally will provide us in long term many, and I hope secure jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. A point well made, actually. Anybody else? Brian.
Thank you, Chair. Brian Heatley, Robleham and Wyke in Weymouth. My ward is on the south of Weymouth Harbour, and so quite a substantial amount of this is actually in my ward. I'm sure that people in Weymouth, there will be all kinds of comments on particular details and so on and so forth. But I think the single thing I would say about it is that there will be, at last, something happening in Weymouth on these sites. We may disagree about what those things are, but it has been such a long time, and it is great to see something beginning to happen. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Brian. Anybody else? David Taylor.
Councillor Taylor, David Taylor for Chelmsford St Mary. I would like to express my extreme thanks to the season we've just had of flooding and major disasters possibly, but with the help of Dorset Council Highways, have stepped in and helped the communities, which was remarkable. We had major flooding issues going down the River Frome and Cerne and affecting, basically running down into the harbour of Weymouth. So we were actually helped by all departments. But it's just a note to say that on top of the harbours, that because of the feedings from our tributaries, we need to look at them carefully as well.
I imagine the link was water in that in the context of what you had to say. But you are right, and we should be congratulating our teams for all the work they've done during the poor weather. What I would just add, I'm going to come back to the Cabinet second. One thing I'm very conscious of, the importance of strong dialogue with the local town councils. And I know in Weymouth particularly, we've had meetings, and I suspect there'll be other meetings with other councils, but it's good and healthy that we keep that strong dialogue, because it does have an impact on what goes on locally, and people do need to feel they've been part of what that sort of process of decision making. And I know Simon is particularly keen on developing that sort of relationship. So really good to see that. Anybody else? If not, I'll come back to the Cabinet. Comments? No? Anybody disagree with the recommendations? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Move on to agenda item 17, which is portfolio of reports. I've seen a number come flooding in to my email box this morning. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. Some came in yesterday. Thank you for those. They'll get published with the minutes of this meeting. So we move on to that. I don't think we need to comment on that. There are no urgent items today, but we're now going to go into exempt business. So I'm going to wait for the